Pastor Liz came into Bunsen Motors, got her car tuned up. She's going off on her post-Advent vacation. Walked in there, the heater was blasting in the 3 bays back in the garage, and Clint was at work, and CJ and Buddy was at work, and radio blasting, rock and roll. 2 cars up on the hoist and one having a oil change. CJ saw the pastor come in. He reached over, turned off the radio. She reached over, she turned it on. She turned it on louder. You've got to do that if you're a pastor. You don't want to let them make you into a little icon, you know. You want to be a living, breathing human being. She likes those guys down at the garage. They like their work, and why shouldn't they? Every day they solve people's problems. A car comes in wounded, it goes out healed, and pastors don't have that same satisfaction. People come in grievous, and they come in confused and troubled and mourning or something, and you talk to them for a while, and they leave mollified or confused or embarrassed that they told you all that stuff. Her most remarkable experience as a pastor was this last fall. She's been there for 6 months, and already early fall, Mr. Carney was dying at the hospital in the city. She drove in to see him and to bring him communion. He's 88 years old. He was lying in bed, breathing his last, but he looked up and saw this tall, beautiful woman come in, and he scooched over in his bed and he patted the side of the bed. She sat down on the side of the bed. He pulled on her arm, and she lay down next to a man who was dying. She turned on her side towards him so that she could sing to him, as she does to people who are dying. Abide with me, fast falls the eventide, the darkness deepens, Lord, with me abide. She sang to him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. She was hoping that his daughters would not come in. At this moment, swift to its close, ebbs out life's little day. Earth's joys grow dim, its glories fade away. She lay next to this man who, though he was dying, was very much interested in her. She hummed some more of Abide With Me, and she sang the last verse. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me. And he took a deep breath, and then there was not another breath. He was dead. She pulled up the sheet to cover him with it. His eyes were wide open, and there was a look of pleasure on his face. He died as one might wish to die, a person in anticipation of great joy. She pulled up the sheet and she scooched over and sat in a chair just as the daughters came in through the door. A close call. A pastor does not want to be seen in bed with a dead man, no. It'd be very hard to explain to people. Clint said, so where are you going? You're on vacation. Yeah, she said, I'm just going to drive around, visit some friends of mine. He said, you heading south? No, she said, actually, I'm going to North Dakota. He said, what'd you say, Sarasota? No, she said, going to North Dakota. He said, well, he must be quite a guy if he's convinced you to come see him in North Dakota. Liz said, Clint, whenever I should get a boyfriend, believe me, you will be the first to know. She got in her car and she headed for North Dakota. At dawn the next morning, she headed for Fargo-Moorhead and then headed straight across. She's going to go see her good friend Marianne, who is a Lutheran pastor in the town of Marmarth, North Dakota, a little railroad town down in the southwest corner of the state. Marianne has been there for 4 years. She took a call. And recently her husband, Matt, left her and went out to the West Coast, and she's been depressed. Liz never cared for Matt. He's a good enough person, I guess. You know, one of those Lutheran guys, kind of amiable and good-natured and nice smile, nice hair, not much going on underneath it, but He sang in a Lutheran rock and roll band in the early 90s called Fortress. And he wrote a hit song called I'm Gonna Love You Like the Rock of Ages, which became a theme song of a cable TV show called Green Pastor, about a space alien who takes over a church in a small town. And so he's gotten a little bit of money from that. She met him, Marianne, during his rock star days, and Fortress was a different kind of a rock band. It was a Lutheran band. They were famous for leaving hotel rooms cleaner than they had found them. They would make the beds and fold up the sheets and write thank you notes to the maids. He said he'd come with her to Marmarth, North Dakota when she accepted the call. He thought the quiet would be good for him as a songwriter, but he got there in all of that quiet, and he discovered that he wasn't that good a songwriter. And that's a terrible thing to discover, so he left her and he went out to Seattle. And that was the plan, that Liz and Marianne were going to drive out to Seattle and see if Matt was interested in getting back together with his wife. Liz drove west from Fargo. She's exhausted. Advent is just absolutely wearing on a pastor. All that joyfulness that you're expected to show all of the time. Lent is much, much easier, much more satisfying. She had to take over the children's Christmas program after the director had a nervous breakdown, and then the stewardship drive came up $12,000 short, and the council just couldn't make the deficit, and she had to pick up a phone and beg for money. And then the boiler went out, and just one thing after another. It was an exhausting year. She was almost at Jamestown, North Dakota, when her cell phone rang, and she reached for it. She's driving 60 miles an hour, but she reached for it. There was a 612 area code. She opened the phone, and the moment she did and heard his voice, she wished that she had not. It was her ex-boyfriend, Brett, a guy sort of like Matt in a way, one of those Lutheran guys, kind of amiable, like Pastor John Bomer, who's going to be replacing Liz now for the next 3 weeks at Lake Wobegon Lutheran Church. A guy who's affable and smiling, and he comes in with his sermons. He buys them from Cliff's sermon service online. You get the large print edition, and each one comes with 2 jokes, and comes with a pronunciation guide for biblical names. People don't like to hear their minister mispronounce names from the Bible, Jehoshaphat and Nineveh and so forth, so it's got those. Here was Brett on the phone. Where are you going? He said, well, she said, I'm going to Seattle. Oh, he said, I wish I were going with you. Well, she doesn't. She was driving faster now, trying to get out of the range of microwave relays. She was out in the middle of North Dakota. She's going 75 miles an hour, and there he was in her right ear. He said, I wish we'd get back together. I think we had a lot going for us. I really think we could make a life together. Don't you? No, she didn't. But she didn't say anything. She met him through friends. A friend introduced him to her, and they went out on a couple of dates, and she just didn't know how to cut him loose. And he had a lot of money, and he gave her expensive things, and she, fool that she was, accepted them. It took a long time to rid herself of Brett. Finally, there was a long silence, and she said, have I lost you? And she had. Thank God. Lord have mercy. She got out to Marmarth, and there was Marianne to meet her. Marianne lives in the rectory, which is a green mobile home with a cross painted on the side of it. She ran out, and she saw Liz, and she threw her arms around her, and she cried. She's been so lonely there. Liz has been lonely in Lake Wobegon, too. Nobody she knew well enough to be able to swear in front of. And ministers do swear, especially around Advent, they do. They talked They hugged. Marianne cried. I called him, she said, and I couldn't get hold of him. I left him 4 messages. I told him I was coming. He hasn't returned my call. Liz said, we're not going. We're not going to go to Seattle. We're going to stop in Montana. I know this place. It's a wonderful place, a hot springs. We'll rent a cabin there. We'll just sit and talk. No, Marianne said. I promised him that I was coming. Liz said, well, he promised you he's going to stick with you through sickness and in health, so now you're even. Marianne said, I just hate to disappoint him, no. And Liz said something so profane, so vulgar. It's a line that women pastors say to each other to let the air out of the balloon, you know? Out of the balloon of piety. When there's too much piety, not enough faith. She said this simple sentence, and Marianne let out a shriek, and she laughed, and she picked up her suitcase, and they headed for Montana, for this resort. It's called Living Waters. It used to be a Baptist Bible camp. It's up in the mountains just north of Missoula. Hot springs bubbling up in this beautiful rocky pool. The Baptists had it for years, but the hot springs were too great a temptation for them. So they sold it. And now it's a resort, just a little resort, 6 cabins there, just 2 older couples in the end cabin, and they didn't seem interested in hot springs. So Marianne and Pastor Liz got to lie naked in hot water and lie out there and talk and think about their lives, which is good for anybody. Better to be a rot-gut sinner than to be a little plaster saint, to be a living, breathing person. The snow started to fall as they lay there in the hot, steaming springs, the water bubbling around them and snow falling, and then it was dark, and they lay out there. And they had this great feeling of blessedness, so much they don't care for in their line of work, but so many blessings, the blessing of taking communion to people living isolated and alone, and their great gratitude. Funerals are good. Weddings are not so good. Weddings are just for show, but funerals, people's hearts are open, and they're so tender at funerals. Liz loves these people. She loves the men in the sidetrack tab. She loves the 15-year-old kid who shovels the walk in the cemetery, and he's out there in his black jacket and his little iPod pods in his ears and his white tennis shoes with the black stripe and the jacket wide open, and his girlfriend comes to see him, and she brings a friend, and he ignores the friend and just looks at the girlfriend. The friend stands off at a distance. There's so much passion there, although nobody touches anybody else. She loves these people. She loves her confirmation kids. She loves the old guys in the Friday morning club down at the Chatterbox Cafe who sit around drinking coffee and telling stories. Oh yeah, I remember him. Walt says. I remember him. He was in love with the teacher, you know. He was in love with her for more than a year, and they went to see each other, and then he started to be afraid that she didn't really care for him, and she just didn't know how to tell him, and she was just seeing him out of sympathy, and he didn't want to be the guy who, when the woman sees him coming up the walk, she says, oh my gosh, how am I going to get rid of him now? So he didn't go to see her anymore, and she figured he wasn't interested, and she moved to Iowa, and she's probably found somebody by now, and he just lived alone, and he died 5 years after that, because bachelors have less life expectancy. You knew that, didn't you? Sure you did. And I think of him every spring when the crocuses come up, those purple crocuses in the Andersons' yard, because she used to live there. He gave her those crocus bulbs. They lay out there, naked women in the Lord's work, the snow coming down and the stars in the sky. Thank you for this good life, they thought. Thank you, thank you, thank you.